Hi, my name is Alex Cole, and I'm currently attending Saginaw Valley State University. This video is being made for my Sociology 280 class about a paper that I wrote. All of the information in this video will be cited in APA format in the video description below. Being born during the so-called information age has changed the lives of many. Things that would have been considered a luxury in the past are now taken for granted by millions, if not billions of people. Think about it. What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? Check your phone for any new text messages? And when you log into your laptop, you probably check your Facebook or Twitter. And that's if you do not have internet on your cell phone. If that's the case, you'd be updated instantly on your phone and would not even have to log into your laptop. In a society becoming more and more consumed by technology, things have and are continuing to change. Electronic communication, such as Facebook, Twitter, text messaging, cell phones, and Skype, has influenced human interaction in multiple ways. In some circumstances, it has been a good influence. However, it is also bad in other situations. Electronic communication, friend or foe. In George Reiser's book, The Globalization of Nothing 2, he identifies things to be either a something or a nothing. A nothing is a social form that is generally centrally conceived, controlled. A nothing can be good or bad, or it can even be both. A something is a social form that is generally indigenously conceived and controlled. Something can also be either good or bad. Things are not necessarily something or nothing. They fall in a range. Many things have elements of nothing and something at the same time. A something can change into a nothing, or vice versa. Determining whether or not it is a something or a nothing comes from Reiser's 5 dimensions of nothing. The dimensions are complexity, spatial, temporal, human, and magical. Each dimension has different criteria used to determine what a certain item is classified as. By comparing things on Reiser's dimension, you can figure out whether they are somethings or nothings. In the complexity dimension, a thing is something that is unique and one of a kind. It has cultural value and cannot be recreated with ease. However, if it is a nothing, it is generic and interchangeable. Nothings tend to be very easy to produce, and there exist many of them. For spatial, a something has local geographic ties. This can be analyzed in 2 different ways. It could either mean that it is specifically created in a certain area, or it could also be where it is usually used at. A nothing in this category lacks those local ties. It is not area specific in terms of the origin or use. In the temporal dimension, a thing must be specific to the times in order to be a something. For an object to be time specific, it would mean that when you think of that object, you also think of a certain time period. If it is time free, it is a nothing. Nothings would be something that does not have a specific time period come to mind. The human dimension means something is humanized. It would require much human interaction and conversation. A nothing is dehumanized and impersonal. Nothings tend to have very limited interaction between humans. In the last dimension, the magical dimension, a something is enchanted while a nothing is disenchanted. However, this dimension is a very difficult one to explain. I will analyze the forms of communication over this dimension. However, it will not be as thorough as the rest of the categories that I look at. Now, globalization and globalization is how things tend to grow into either somethings or nothings. Globalization tends to be large and primarily capitalist. Think of it as growing and globalization combined. Now, globalization tends to be global structures and ideas that are mixing with local elements to create new forms at global and local levels. While there are exceptions to this rule, globalization tends to spread some things, while globalization usually spreads nothings. Each form has a positive side as well as a negative aspect. Electronic communication has even influenced business-related communication greatly. The 5 chosen forms of electronic communication are viewed differently by Reiser than they are by society. Does this mean that they are helping or hurting human interaction? Each form has different support for both views. And after analyzing them on Reiser's something to nothing scale, the answer should be apparent. The first form is Twitter. It was created in 2006. In March of 2006 was the very first tweet. Ever since then, it has grown very rapidly. In 2007, there were only 400,000 tweets per quarter. Now this rose to 100 million by 2008. That's a big difference. However, by the end of 2010, there were over 65 million tweets registered per day. And during some recent major events like the 2011 Women's World Cup and Michael Jackson's controversial death, we have registered historic figures of over 100,000 tweets per hour. With these astonishing numbers of growth, Twitter is emerging as one of the top social networking sites. Now, on Reitzer scale, Twitter is definitely a nothing. For the complexity dimension, Twitter is generic and interchangeable. No matter who uses it, it is always the same. There are no variations of Twitter, just one generic product. It has no local ties as it is a global sensation. Twitter is not specifically made in a certain area and can be used anywhere in the world. Twitter is also time-free. When you think of it, you don't think of a certain time period. It seems that it has been around forever. It is dehumanized and impersonal. You do not directly interact with others. You just post stuff so they can see it, but you don't actually converse with them. Twitter can be considered enchanted depending on how you look at it. It helps you keep in touch with family members that you've not seen in a long time, which can be magical in a sense. Facebook was created in 2004. It started out just at Harvard for Harvard students. Then it soon spread to other schools in the Ivy League. After gaining popularity in those schools, it spread to many college and university campuses across the globe. Now, by the time it was successful in the college world, it then became available to high school students. And now, Facebook is available to anyone over the age of 13 with a valid email address and an internet connection. However, this doesn't reduce the traffic of the younger children. The report found that at least 7.5 million children, more than 1/3 of the users, are actually under the age of 13 and violated the site's terms. Now, this is a huge threat to society because the same report found that those kids' Facebook accounts were largely unsupervised by their parents, exposing the children to dangerous malware and serious threats such as predators or bullies. After going global, Facebook has finally hit the 100 million active user mark. Now, 3 years later from that globalization of it, it has received well beyond 800 million users. Facebook is more of a something than Twitter, but is definitely at the nothing end of the scale. It is generic and interchangeable. Your friends may vary from account to account, but the website is still exactly the same. It has very minor local ties because it can be used in anywhere that has an internet connection. It's time-free. It's not specific to a certain time period. Now, Facebook is more humanized than Twitter in the respect that you actually like or comment on people's statuses and posts. That kind of generates more of an interaction between humans. Now, Facebook can also be considered enchanted and magical because of the fact that you can also keep in touch with many different types of people in your life, long-lost high school friends, your college roommates, any kind of people, you can keep in touch with them. Now, text messaging began in 1992. 15 years later from the start, now 74% of all people that have mobile phones actually use texting. Those numbers have grown even more rapidly since. In countries like Finland, Sweden, Europe, the percentage is over 80% of the people. I mean, even in the Philippines, people send over 142 billion texts per year. That's crazy how many texts have been sent. Now, texting is basically in the center of Reitzer's scale. Texting is generic and interchangeable. It is the same from person to person. There's not much variation or change. It does not have any local ties. Now, it is more humanized than Facebook in the respect that you're sending the message to a certain person or a group of people. Not everyone can see it, so it makes it more private. Now, it is time-free because it's not specific to a certain time period, but it also is enchanted in the same sense as Twitter and Facebook were. Now, a telephone was invented back in the 1870s by Alexander Graham Bell. Now, those were pretty much popular until the invention of the cell phone in 1973. Now, cell phones have grown more popular, making the ordinary landlines more out of date. Some people do still use those, but most people in the modern generations are upgrading completely to mobile phones just to save on the prices. China Mobile itself has over 500 billion users, which makes majority of the cell phones are actually produced in Asian companies. The next closest is only around 10 billion, so there's a huge difference between China and the rest of the world. Now, cell phones have a positive impact on society and much more of a something than the previous three forms. Cell phones are interchangeable and generic. They do not have local ties. However, there is much more of a human aspect of it. They're a lot more personal because you can hear the person's voice. Instead of reading what the other person typed, you actually have an everyday conversation without the visual aspect. This is crucial for the enchanted aspect. Speaking with someone and hearing their voice after a long time of not seeing that person can be very magical. Now, Skype was created in 2003. By 2005, there were 75 million accounts created. 5 years later, there were over 500 million accounts. Every day, almost 10% of all those people that have active accounts are actually making voice and video calls. Now, the Skype is very similar to the actual face-to-face conversations, but it is generic interchangeable. It pretty much is the same regardless of the computer that you're on. It doesn't have local ties. It can be used in any country that has internet connection. However, Skype is very time-specific. Being able to talk to someone far away, like using a cell phone, has kind of been around for a while. However, being able to actually see them is a very new technology. Skype is very personable because, like I said, you're actually seeing the person. It beats written messages and voice calls because you can see their emotions, you can see how they act when they speak to you. So the human is very present while using Skype. Now, Skyping a family member who is fighting overseas, like in a war, is very magical and as enchanted as it gets. Other uses of Skype may not be quite as magical as that, but can still be very touching. Now, electronic communication has influenced human interactions in various ways. Some have been very beneficial to society, while others may have negatively affected the human race. After analyzing the forms of communication in the eyes of society and Reitzer, you can determine the benefits and consequences. Using Reitzer's dimensions of nothing, you can make his opinions of electronic communication apparent. Now, is Reitzer right? The decision is yours. Electronic communication, friend or foe?